Hello, and thank you all for joining me for this video presentation today. My name is Paul Brett. I'm a Senior Software Support Analyst supporting the HIP product from HCL. Today's topic is using MongoDB with HIP 10. Okay, so we start at the HCL Integration Platform or HIP Design Server login screen, which as you can see is rendered through a web browser. I'm going to log in now. Here we are in the program. There are currently no projects loaded. The first thing I'm going to do is import a project from a zip file, and this zip file can be obtained from HCL support. I'm going to browse for the zip file. It's called mongodb.zip. And I'm going to import. Okay, so now I have one project called MongoDB. Let's go in and have a look at that. We have two schema. One is a JSON, phishing.json, and we have a blob, traditional type tree type schema for recording our results and writing out to files. Within maps we have three maps, one called simple insert data, one called simple query data, and the third and final one, simple remove all data. Should be obvious what each of those does, but let's look at them each in turn. Simple insert data. Okay, so let's right click and bring up the settings for this card first. In the connection, you can see that the connection for this card is MongoDB. In the connection properties, it is expecting to find a MongoDB instance on the same machine as the design server. Now my setup is not like that. I don't have a MongoDB locally, so I'm going to connect to a remote machine where I have MongoDB daemon running. Okay, if I click the test button here, we get a connection established successfully message, so I can be sure that this is actually working. So let's click next, and we're going to be going into the fish collection. There's lots of other options there. Let's click next and OK. Let's have a look at the rules. Let's expand the card, and as you can see, the structure allows for me to hard code a single fish to insert into the database. In this case, we're going to insert carp at £30. Okay, talking of the database, how are we going to query the database to ensure that this is working? Well, before we leave this map, let's just quickly hit save, and we'll give it a chance to build the map while we're off. Okay, so that's built successfully. Let's look at the database. From my terminal session, where I have the Linux box that's running the 4 Docker containers that make up the HIP design server, I can execute this Docker command to go into the HIP server Mongo container and leverage the Mongo client that is in there, providing an additional argument to connect to my remote Mongo database, and I'm using the same IP address here that I used in the card just now. I can use the fish database, and I can query for any records that are in there currently, and as you can see, it is currently empty. We'll come back to this in a moment. Let's go back to our map. We've already built, so let's click the Run button. We have a Run Complete message. Back at the database client window, we can check that the information was actually inserted, and there we go. We have one JSON document returned showing that in the fish database we have carp £30 in weight. Okay, so that's the insert data map. Let's go back to the mapping design server and bring up the query map. Once again, this map is designed to look at the use the MongoDB adapter on the input card. This connection string is going to need changing again. Okay, so that's my remote Mongo instance. Everything else is correct. I click next, I click next, I click OK. On the output card, we are set to write to a simple file using the file adapter, and the file is called fish.out. Let me just quickly show you the rules. I mean, there's nothing spectacular here. There's the input structure, there's the output structure, and we have pretty much a one-to-one mapping on the rules here. The encoding goes to encoding, and the JSON document goes to the JSON document. So let's save, just to save my changes. Let's build, so that it's recompiled with a new IP address in there. And then we hit the run button and the map completes successfully. Looking at the output of the map, we can view data here and we can see that this map has brought back exactly the same information that was brought back on our query client, i.e. one record saying that there's a fish called carp that weighs 30 pounds. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's look at the third and final map, which is simple remove all data. Let's have a look at the properties of this card. Again, the connection is MongoDB. Again, the connection properties will need to be changed because they currently are referring to the wrong IP address. Let's get the right one in there. Okay, next, okay. Okay, so let's save and then build and then run this map. Okay, so this map in theory has removed all the records from the database, my one record. Switch back to my client and run the query, and you will see that there is indeed no records in the database. We can also go to simple query data and run this map again and check the output of the map, and it comes out back with a blank card. Okay, so this is great. I have all my maps. I can insert one fish. Let's do something a little bit different now. Let's reinsert the carp record with running the simple insert data map, which has been complete, and we can check it with the Mongo client. And the record is back in there, fish, carp. Okay, let's add a different fish. Let's add tuna, and let's say this is a heavier fish. Let's say it's a 60-pound tuna. Okay, so I'm going to save that change. I'm going to build the map to include those changes, and then I'm going to run the map. Back on our Mongo client, running the query again will show that there are now two fish in the database. Actually, that says carp and carp still. Did I miss something? Fish, carp, weight. The weight has gone incorrectly, but for some reason the fish still says carp. I'm wondering if maybe I didn't press the enter key. It still says carp down here. It's my fault. Let's try that again. Okay, so now it says tuna. Now it says 60. So let's build and run this map again. We're going to have 3 fish in our database now. It doesn't matter. So we do our query again, and we get carp 30, carp 60, and tuna 60. Okay, 3 fish. It doesn't matter. It suits my purposes for the next part of the demonstration. Going into simple query data, we are going to build and run this map again. Looking at the output, we note that we are still only receiving 1 fish. So what's going on, you might say? Well, this is because the input card has a flag in it called SDF, which basically enables the action property single document format. So we need to turn this feature off. We also need to set the QTY to S to retrieve all documents, and there are some additional advanced properties that we need to change as well. We need to change the fetch as to burst, and the fetch unit, I think, to 1. Okay, so let's go down and click the next button and OK. So now the card is set to retrieve all documents, but the schema is still set to only receive 1. You will note the range here is 1 to 1. So I fully expect this map to fail with 1 or more inputs was invalid. So let's save this map, let's build, and let's run. Okay, we have an error. 1 or more inputs was invalid. So it is as we expected. Let's view the data that we've received. Currently showing as completely blank. Weird. Anyway, the important thing is that we need to change the schema that's used on both the input and output to be aware of multiple documents being received. So the first thing I'm going to do is just remove these two rules here. Let's do that one first, enter, and that one second, enter. Okay, so I'm now going to replace the schema on both these cards with an alternative. Now the original schema on my PC was phishing.json, so I'm just going to rename that to phishingm.json. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to tell I'm going to remove the single document from there. I'm going to put in the characters to say that there's going to be an array, and I'm going to paste in 2 copies of the document with a comma between them. Okay, so this now tells the schema that it is now expecting multiple documents, and let's just tab. Okay, so it's just tidied up the document a little bit. I'm going to change this second red snapper to something else just so it's very clear that this is a completely different document. Okay, so we have an array with potentially multiple documents. This is our new schema now, so I'm going to save that file and I'm going to import it into our project. Move that out of the way, move that out of the way. Let's go back to the, let's hit save here for the moment. Let's go back to the home screen and, sorry, no, not in the home screen. Let's go to schemas and import a new JSON. Let's browse my computer and bring up the new phishingm.json file that I just edited. So if we look in our schemas now, we have a new schema called phishingm. So I just need to change our maps to use it. So let's open our maps again, simple insert, simple query, and simple remove. Okay, so the simple query is the map we're going to be changing. Let's add that back to the canvas. Right, so instead of using the phishing.json schema, each of these cards has to use the phishingm.json. So let's go in and do that input card first. phishingm. Type is JSON and OK. And on the output side, let's do the same. Settings, phishingm, object JSON, OK. So let's expand both those structures again. You will note that the JSON object now has a range of 0 to S instead of it was blank before, which indicated a range of 1 to 1. So rather than mapping these items over individually, what we need to do now is create a functional map to deal with this repeating group. Encoding can still go to encoding, of course. And to start our functional map design, I'm just going to drag over the object. However, I'm going to expand this and then make a slight change. f_each doc. When I press the enter key, it prompts me to create that functional map, which I shall create. And then in the functional map itself, it's just a one-to-one mapping, UOM, fish, and weight. Let's just show those rules. That looks good. We'll click save. We'll close that. Back to simple query data. This map should be ready to run now. I've got the changes I made to the schema, the previous changes I made to the card to retrieve all documents, turning off that single document format entry. So we build, and that's built successfully, and then we run. And the map is completed successfully. Let's have a look at our output data now, and as you will see, we have retrieved the three fish that we have in our database. Always carp twice, 2 different weights, and tuna at 60. Okay, so that map works perfectly now that it has been set to retrieve multiple documents. Let's go into settings one more time and just show the action properties. Single document format was turned off. Quantity I changed back to S, and listen back to 0. This map works perfectly now. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch my video presentation today. If you found the content interesting and informative, please use that like button. If you have time, I would also like you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.